All right, Harry. A couple days ago, I got this question that says, "How do we know the will of God?" What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and that's something that really goes through our minds a lot. As even as we travel, even at my age, I'm 70 years old, and I still am curious about that. But not curious like I was when I was 50 years younger. But I believe now, looking back, I learned most of what I've learned. I believe in the rearview mirror as you see look back on life. And walking with God for me is has been, and I believe is an adventure. But the problem with an adventure is there's no security in an adventure. When we're out, when we're on a journey like that, things take new turns. But the joy of it is that God's with you on the journey. People that, if you think of people like, as an example, Daniel, I'll use that as an example. Daniel was carried off to Babylon as a teenager, uh, and he was a prince in Israel. And then he was carried off 600 miles to Babylon, and he was under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar. But what happened is he started serving Nebuchadnezzar instead of where he was. And but he kept true to the teachings that he had understood. He wanted to eat the right food. He didn't want to eat the lavish food that Nebuchadnezzar was serving. He says, "No, give us simple food, just grains and simple things, vegetables. That's what we were looking for." And so he started serving, but he was faithful to God. Before long, he interpreted the dream for the king. The king admired that, gave him a fancy job, and before long, things were fine. But you know, but he had to stay faithful. He was under Nebuchadnezzar's reign for nearly 70 years. Until Babylon was overthrown. Then he was in the Medes and Persians, the next kingdom, and here he was at the top again. How did that happen? He stayed faithful. And the thing is, was that what Daniel's plan when he was a kid? No.
No, of
Is that
course
what he,
not.
no. And the thing is that his is an exception, of course, but he stayed faithful. He did what was right. He just, and then in the end, when he was about 90 years old, he faced the lion's den. Again, the people started, his friends or supposed friends started hating on him and really didn't like the way he was prospering. 90 years of age, he was going to be one of the rulers over them, and so they said, "You can't pray to anybody except for the king." And Daniel says, "No." He says, "I've always prayed to God. God's been that's what it's about." But there's little things that I think we have to learn. One of the main things that comes to my mind, and that's also in a working world, but particularly in the spiritual world, is to get today right. So often we think way ahead. Okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do year from now, 5 years from now? All this kind of stuff. In the spiritual side, I don't think you want to go there. Naturally, you do have to plan because you have to have a structure in your life. Spiritually, I don't think so. I think we have to get today right. What's today look like?
The
Just be
answer is
faithful.
yes. And it's actually reminds me of this revelation I had when I first came to Christ. I've been a Christian at this point for maybe about a year, and I was sitting there and I was just growing out of everything, and I'm saying, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? And I had this revelation. I was sitting there, and it just clicked on me. It's like, whatever I do, knowing that God is with me is knowing that I'm doing the will of God. As long as we're walking in obedience, like you were saying earlier, whatever we choose. Sometimes God has opened up so many doors in my life and closed many other things. How many things in your life, Harry, just even that didn't work out or did work out, but you're just by being obedient and faithful, you'll find out quite soon what the will of the Lord is in your life.
But it always takes new turns. Like I've been involved, especially in the last 10 years, more so because as I've tried to phase into a spiritual journey. Here I'm on doing YouTube. I never, ever, ever. Months ago, it didn't even dawn on me. No, seriously, it didn't dawn on me. Prior to that, I was doing this Bible distribution. How did that happen? That happened because I was in a flea market handing out Bibles, and one particular Bible was hey, this works really nice. So let's try it in a few stores. And now we've got about 400 stores. So how did that happen? I have no idea. When we placed those baskets in the stores, I walk away and I says, Lord, I don't understand. Don't even explain it to me, but it works. And so there's so many things that just happen. None of this was planned, but just something happened and it clicked. And so you do a little more of it. But I was at Teen Challenge for 5 years, and then one day the COVID hit, and that was so that was done. And that was a real thrill and a real privilege because it allowed me to actually mobilize my faith, to put it into words. Prior to that, I had a static faith. I really couldn't explain things. I'm not saying I'm very good at it yet, but I really, really enjoy the spiritual interaction, and that those are just opportunities. But the less we plan, the better it'll go, but just always try to get today right. And if we do that for 7 days, you got a week right. And do that for four times, you got a month right. And just try to get it, just walk with
The
God.
bigger picture will be mapped out for you. What does the proverb say? Lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make straight your paths. Sometimes management decisions is for management, and our job is just to be a faithful servant.
Yeah, I spent my life in management, and I am not anymore. I just flat out don't want to be there. Like, mind you, I'm fortunate to be retired, so I don't have to do that side of life. And in the business side, I mean, if you're as a career, you have to do what you have to do, in a good way. But no, I'm not into management anymore. Like, I just want to be an appropriate servant. The other thing I want to keep in mind too is we will always fail, but fail right. Learn from it and fall forward. Okay, and do damage control. Don't add insult to injury. But when we fail, and also accept responsibility for where we do fail, like not failing on projects because that's God's will if it succeeds or not, but failing in our own part of it. As an example, David. He took responsibility for his failures and he ended up being a friend of God's. Like, God could work with him. King Saul did not. He blamed others for his problems. So failure will come. We'll always fail. I can give you a long list, but that's the point is, by the grace of God, we found our way through that. And the one more item is do something and say, well, what should you do? Secularly, I always tell young people, just do something, grab a job, go, make it happen. And something will click. The first job, no. Second job, no. Maybe it's job 5, maybe it's job 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. Find something, make it, see what happens. And spiritually, likewise, it doesn't, whatever, just do something. There's an opportunity in front of you. Somebody's hurting, somebody's this, something that, conversation, whatever. My own journey of life, mixed in with my family and all this stuff. There's little things that happen, and trying to be faithful and trying to find a path and trusting that God would give us a path. And it's amazing that there's an expression I like, says, when values are clear, decision making is easy. And it's not always easy making a decision, but I really wanted to, sometimes I have to sit down for a day or a week or a month or a year to figure out, what do I really believe on this topic, and sort it out, and then make that decision. And those tough ones have really turned out nice. There's a crossroad, fork in the road, and you eventually say, well, the fork to the left is the one I got to take. That's the only right one. So do it. And it's amazing. I'm really, really glad.
Amen. Thanks for this insight, Harry.